Hello and welcome to White Hat Riddles. I'm Angel, and today with me I have Marcin, who is a Public Policy Director at AI Chamber. Hello, Marcin.
Hello, Angel. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. And can you say a little bit about yourself? I heard that you have a history with Bulgaria already.
I do. I've been in the digital regulation space for more than 15 years now. I started as an activist, maybe, let's call it that way. Then I went through Polish government. I represented the Polish government working on the general data protection regulation, among other things. And then I went on to work for Google for 10 years.
Okay.
And as one of the markets that I covered for Google was Bulgaria. So I was here very regularly for a few years and managed to see quite a bit of the country as well. And I really am happy that after these years I can come back and see what's changed in Bulgaria. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm glad to hear that. And can you share with us a little bit more about what's the reason of your current visit?
Yes, I was invited and very graciously by the Gate Institute, so it's a part of the Sofia University, for a conference that's happening tomorrow, New Horizons. It's all about AI and how to make AI flourish in Europe and how to go from. I personally will be speaking about how to make sure that AI, what's developed in laboratories, actually makes it to market, and what can we do, especially in the legal sphere, how can we help this development of AI and bring it to the people?
Yeah, okay. And a lot of things on people's minds are related right now to the so-called EU AI Act, and essentially the framework that it presents, and most people look negatively at the AI Act. You as a policy, and essentially more on the legal side, I want to understand how these things works. Can you share a little bit more about the AI Act itself?
Well, yeah, it's definitely a divisive topic. Yeah. Let's put it this way. I'm not sure more people view it negatively. I think most people don't know enough about the AI Act and generally about the digital regulation that's coming out of Brussels, and because there's a lot of digital regulation coming out of Brussels, especially the last term of the Commission was very busy. So this is when the AI Act, among many other things, was adopted. But if you have names like the the Data Act, Data Governance Act, AI Act, and General Data Protection, and et cetera, et cetera. So people are just probably a little bit confused, and the AI Act as well, right? It's it's of course a long piece of legislation, because unfortunately this is the standard here in recent years, that these acts have really grown in size and complexity. Yep. So sometimes maybe the idea is not so bad. I mean, if you think about it, AI is an emerging technology. It's very important. It's horizontal. It's basically finding its way into every part of our society and economy. So, the idea of regulating AI maybe is not the worst idea in the world. I'm a lawyer and I'm a practitioner of public policy, digital public policy, but I'm a skeptic about how far we can achieve goals with law. I'm kind of skeptical about the power of the law. It's some people maybe view it as too omnipotent. If we enact something, it will happen. I don't think so. But I'm not generally, and I think many people are not generally against the legislation. So the idea of the AI Act came out of a strand of work that the Commission had going for quite a few years. And in 2019, they published this paper on human-centric AI. So these kind of very high-level ethical principles that should govern AI development and use in Europe. So that's a very, let's put, ethically charged piece of legislation, because that's where the roots are of the AI Act. It's all about ethics.
Which year was that?
That was 2019.
Also, it's before the popularization of ChatGPT.
Yes. What happened when ChatGPT came out is another story, and it actually broke a little bit the coherence of the AI Act. But we can talk about it a bit later. But so they were working on this. Because, you and I know that AI didn't come out when ChatGPT 3.5 was launched, right? This is where it was. This is when society suddenly, caught
access.
Yeah, and suddenly went, "Oh my God, what is this?" But being at Google for a long time, I remember the work has been going on for a long time, right?
Oh,
It's nothing new. It just suddenly became the center of attention of the media, of the people, of the politicians, etc. So that's it. No, but this work was going on for a long time, and even the AI Act was conceived much before. So I think this was 2021 when they started work, or 22 maybe, when they started work on the AI Act. And the idea was exactly that we need an ethical framework for use of AI, because this is important later on. The idea is based around the prohibited or limited uses of AI. So it was not supposed to regulate technology itself. And we actually have had the pleasure of talking to the guy who wrote the first drafts of the AI Act. And this was, in his words, very clear that this was what they wanted to do, to make sure that some of, technology, as this very popular saying says, it's like a knife, right? You can
spread, but you can
butter,
cut.
or you can cut someone's heart out or kill someone. So it's that concept that is not bad in itself, right? So yes, we want AI, but we don't want it using for bad things. And that was the original idea. And that it kind of got hijacked in the process.
The Asimov vibes, basically.
Yes. So suddenly, once this whole process of political negotiations and I don't know how well you know Brussels, how it works, but it's
I don't know it well enough.
Yes, it's a very specific, peculiar.
I'm very curious to learn, because I think that a lot of the policy doesn't resonate with the common folk. I'll be honest.
Very good, very good. So you do understand Brussels. Brussels is there's a reason why they call it a bubble, right? It's very much self-contained. So they make sometimes decisions based mostly on political considerations, not really thinking about the implications for common people like us somewhere in an obscure part of the union. I'm sorry to say, I'm a Euro enthusiast, but I'm just talking about the practice of how this law is developed.
Far away from the sun.
Very far sometimes, very far sometimes. So what was originally maybe not a bad idea just really got warped and skewed. The way it works is that everybody wants to put their piece into this. That's why it grows in size, it grows in complexity, because no one wants anything deleted, so they just keep on adding layers and layers and layers. And that's how you end up with, I think, 156 pages of the AI Act. So if you ask for an opinion about the AI Act, it's complicated, right? There could be a good center to this, but then there's a lot of barnacles, so to say, that have grown onto from different sides, and the ChatGPT question is just one of them. So, but among business people, because again, depending on who you ask, the opinion may differ. But among business people, there is generally a rather skeptical view of the AI Act, because it's just a considerable bureaucratic burden on the AI or people who use AI make AI as well. So indeed, not the best piece of legislation I've seen, to put it mildly. Even from a legal perspective, it's just badly drafted, right? There's a lot of the
issue for companies, because as a cybersecurity company, we work with companies in different stages of development. Sometimes are, let's say, startups, some of very big enterprises. A lot of people are commenting on the fact that we are already very far away from USA and China in terms of developing any type of tech, excluding some form of proprietary technology, let's say somewhere in the UK or few bigger companies in retail, let's say IKEA, things like this. We have big companies, but they're not in tech. No. We don't have $500 billion tech company here. Something to everyone to want to work with, right? And if we stifle the development from the ground up, let's say with bureaucracy, less people would want to try. And then I think this is just a statistical thing. Less people try, less people succeed, right? So then if we limit people from the start, if we get all these recommendations and requirements, and especially documentation, if you're a startup, you don't have money for the lawyers. You want to work on the code. You want to work on the acquiring customers and so on, the next funding round. And I think this is why people are looking skeptically at it, not because we think that everything should be done, but everything should be allowed. I mean, from a cybersecurity perspective, I really dislike the fact that they're using the word ethical, because politics is not ethical. Politics is serving a purpose. There's a lobby. What someone is considering ethical today was not ethical 100 years ago, where principles, for example, of ethical hacking will be the same in 200 years, because this is ethical. This is regardless, for example, of the political party. Let's say, you just giving you an example, when we don't have political views as a company. It doesn't matter who is being hacked, Our only purpose to exist as a company is to protect the citizens in the companies,
the customers, of course.
So we would never say to someone because he's from a different political party or we don't like them or something like this that we're not going to help them. And this is what is ethical, because you serve a purpose. With politics, it's not like this. So I think this is a lot of confusion. This is bringing a lot of confusion that they're calling something which is politically powered ethical. But, this is just a detail. For me, I really want to understand how would this impact people, who will impact, who has to follow this AI regulation?
That's a really good question. And on the ethics side, again, I'm not 100% against, but I definitely think that in Europe we place the accents wrong, right? Because technology, first and foremost, must be effective. It must do what it's designed to do. Of course, then we should place some sort of limits to what you can do with the technology. But first and foremost, as you said, you are there to protect people, and that's what you do, right? Yeah. That's so a company's first and foremost concern is to make a product that works and that people want to use, right? So, and of course, ethics is important, but it's just the next stage. And yes, I think we do place the accent sometimes a little bit wrong, because we are proud of our European values. We have the European way of life, and this is again something that slightly differentiates us here in Eastern Europe. We are I'm Polish, you are Bulgarian, so we're coming from a slightly different point of departure than, say, people in France or Germany that are, they're developed, rich countries that want to protect, this unique model that they build up, the welfare state. It's nice and comfortable, right? We're not there. So for us, effectiveness and, getting growth and catching up is far more important than to them, right? So it's just a slightly different mindset. But to your question, the simple question is everyone. Like everyone who uses any sort of computer system, because this is basically, you need a computer to run AI or any system, because the AI Act basically regulates AI systems. The definition is so long and complicated that practically, it's difficult to understand what it means. But everyone kind of understands that it's a computer that's running some sort of system that uses some sort of maybe self-changing, maybe not, based on maybe AI. I'm sorry for putting it this way, but the definition is really, really, that's one of the bad things about the AI Act. It's very vague. But we kind of know what we mean. So any sort of system that uses these self-learning or machine learning mechanisms will surely be covered as a system. So who is now bound to follow the AI Act? You'd be wrong thinking that just people who create it. That would be simple, right? So relatively, especially in Europe, unfortunately, the list would be kind of short. But actually, it concerns not just the creators, so the providers, actually, because it's not about who creates physically, but who sells or provides to the market the system. So that's providers. That's the number one group. And then we have importers and just people who sell it, right? That's the second group, quite easy. But surprisingly to many people, even deployers of AI have to follow the AI Act. There's a separate, of course, smaller, not as stringent set of rules that deployers must follow, but they must follow. So anyone who uses a system, right? If you're a company, even, I don't know, you're a shop.
Yeah.
right? But you have assistant, or you use AI to help you prepare your online store offerings, or you know,
to recommend
whatever
recommendation engines.
Whatever you do, you're caught by the AI Act, right? And this is something you should always we should always underline, that no matter how small you are, no matter how little you even use, that it's not yours, you just bought it as part of a package, you know, a Google Workspace, right? Google's Workspace is full of AI, almost everywhere, from Gmail, Sheets everywhere, Gmail, you get AI everywhere. So it doesn't mean you suddenly have to do God knows what, but at least you have to think about the AI Act and do an audit to see what sort of system it is that you're using, and what category of system this is, and how are you using it, right? So at least you should do a basic sweep of what you're doing to make sure you don't fall into any of the probably you won't, like 95% or maybe even more people will not fall into any of the higher categories of that the AI Act creates, but at least to be sure, like if I'm a lawyer advising a company, I say at least you should take this little effort and see if you are in the clear or you need to do more. Probably you don't, but at least be sure. You know, for now, still many of these obligations are not in force. So there's time to prepare, and maybe we'll have time more. Maybe we can talk about it later. But at least start thinking. If you think it doesn't apply to you, you're probably wrong. You probably need to at least make a little effort to make sure you have nothing else to do.
Yeah, okay. And you mentioned that there's different types of categories, right? So essentially, usually when you have some form of framework, in NIS2 it's critical infrastructure or space or something like this, for example. Are they clearly defined? Do we have a clear understanding of what the category?
Of course not.
That's easy. No.
But you know, if you start talking about basing a legal act on ethics, you know, ethics is not maths, right? Ethics is not. So even the inception of the AI Act already had its seeds of ambiguity, because this is based on morality, on how you define different concepts, right? Is it something, even such simple, maybe concepts like, is something beneficial or detrimental to it's in the GDPR too, right? You cannot do some things if they are detrimental, like automated decision making, if it's detrimental to the, but how do you define that, right? You know what I mean? So there's
not measurable, essentially. You don't
exactly. Well, again, there's some things that are quite simple. Some simply yes, so they're in or they're against the AI. Some things are very clearly in line, but there's always going to be a gray zone, right? And there's a lot of gray zones, unfortunately, in the AI Act, which is one of the biggest concerns. So if you're a company and you want to be compliant, you will have to make margin calls, right? If you want to be a little bit more risky and do something that might get you maybe in trouble, or you want to play it safe and just don't do something. That might mean a missed business opportunity or a missed functionality or just less effective products, right? So there's going to be obviously some trade-off there. But the categories that the AI Act introduces has basically four tiers and it's all based on risk. So what sort of risk is created by this AI system to citizens, society, and whatnot? And depending on this, it's either a prohibited system. So there's a group of applications of AI that are simply banned in Europe. And by the way, it's not. It really shouldn't be AI, because they're banned not because they use AI. They're just things that we don't like. A good example is a social scoring system that everybody knows from China. Well, everybody thinks they know from China because it's in the media, right? And everybody knows that in China they have this very awful system that is like dystopian, Orwellian, and the poor Chinese people are, harassed for throwing a paper on the sidewalk. But the reality is quite far from this. And the most interesting thing is it's not really based on AI. it's just a simple kind of database. Like if you
it is a database. I think,
if you do something wrong, you just get written there that you get like minus points. If you do something well, you get, I don't know, plus points. So you get your minus points for. It's like we have this system in Poland for traffic violations. That if you get tickets, you get written to this database, and if you have too many tickets, you lose your license, right?
Yeah, it's
that's a bloody social scoring system. So it should be banned by the AI Act. But you know what I mean? Some people, it sounds good on paper, right? Because we don't want to live in a dystopian society like China, right? So,
yes, we don't.
So we have to all be against the social scoring system. But what does it have to do with AI? I really don't know. Okay, maybe what they meant was we don't want these autonomous robots looking at us on the streets, and if someone's, I don't know, being loud, but that's not in the act, right? Maybe that's what was in their heads, but it's not really in the act. So that's just a good example. So, but there's some things that are debatable but understandable. So another one of these prohibited uses is real-time facial recognition.
Okay.
Fine. Again, we're trying to protect ourselves from some sort of abuse in Orwellian society. I can understand it, but there are exemptions, and I think it's a good thing for security. Yeah. So unless you're looking for security, you're trying to protect the people, which is fine. Yeah.
I can give you an example for this one. I'm following right now the USA market because usually we follow, and I think this is not related to security or AI, but it's economics thing. Right now, because of all of the things that are happening with money, everyone is getting poorer.
Except the people who are getting richer.
Exactly, but they're very few actually. And let's say you see UPS firing 30,000 people, and then their stock goes up.
Yeah.
So that means that the people who fired them, which are 20 directors, became very rich, and 30,000 people. It
happened to my ex-company.
Yeah. So, but then this leads to something called mass repossessions of cars. So the repo, getting back the cars, is skyrocketing right now. We're talking millions of cars getting repoed.
That's an important signal.
A very important signal. Yeah. Don't buy a car now because they're going to be importing them from USA very soon.
There's going to be a lot of cheap cars.
Yeah, exactly. But
that's good. I have to remember this.
The note here is that there's companies that are coming up right now with automated ways. Let's say imagine Waymo car or a taxi driver car, which is using camera and essentially collecting all the numbers on the streets and sending them to a centralized database where the repo companies can find someone's car that they usually
didn't return.
Didn't return. And this is now in some cities this is banned because this is considered unlawful collection of personal information because this is your car, and unless the person who has the ability finds you on your address, this is like invasion of privacy, right?
Okay.
And they're trying to ban it, and but also at the same time this presented, for me at least, a new way to think about a car, a taxi driver. A taxi driver can have different ways to earn money apart from the driving because he's moving. What data can they collect? What, for example, weather data. For example,
it's a waste to just drive around.
Exactly.
Right? Without.
And I'm sure that we will have a lot of companies that are trying to make one, let's say, trip, movement, job or something, earn more in a different way. I think AI is opening new ways to think about collection and interpretation of data. So therefore, you need more data to be collected, and then you have these types of new markets opening.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. It's interesting that in the States they are very laissez-faire in terms of personal data. Generally, in the States, especially they publish mugshots when they stop people.
Yeah. So, they have the public camera with the police guys with the YouTube.
And that's all public, but the license plates would be private information. It's like somehow doesn't compute for me. But in my hometown, they automated parking tickets. Yep. There's these cars that look a little bit like the Google Street View cars. They've got cameras all around. They just drive around the city. They check the license plates against the central system because we have a central system of parking tickets. And at that timestamp, you have no active parking ticket, there you go.
I think this should be a drone, actually.
It could be a drone. Yeah. It's much cheaper, right?
Much cheaper to be a drone. Yeah. I think
and
people are
drive.
still and the car is not gonna participate in the movement.
Exactly. I think it's. But this is a very.
Don't steal this idea, guys.
This is a very good, exactly the kind of ethical trade-off where we need to decide what we want, right? Do we want effective enforcement of rules? Because ultimately, someone just nicked someone else's car. I mean, why are they trying to repo it? Because that person owes the money. So it's just enforcement of a contract. So are we kind of more on the side of protecting, I don't know, what, privacy, yes, versus protecting contracts, right? It's a trade-off that every society should make. So AI Act is in a way kind of this big collection of trade-offs, right? Some of the things we don't allow and other things we allow, but under a lot of conditions. So just to finish off because there's 8 different categories of prohibited.
I think we're still on the first one.
Well, we're actually on the second, because the first one was social scoring, the second one was facial recognition, the third one was exploiting vulnerabilities of individuals that will likely result in significant harm. Now, you are asking, is this precise?
Yeah.
Does that sound precise to you?
This sounds like a drone scanning at war, something like
is
this.
It likely to result in significant harm? Maybe, but that's something you need to do. So all this market of risk analysis, it's going to boom. By the way, people, you heard it here first, set up risk analysis companies. And generally AI consulting, I think it's... If I get bored of this job, I'm setting up my AI consultancy. I
think so, yeah. But there's a lot of, just a side note here as well, we're going to be drifting off, I'm sure, on this is a very interesting topic to me at least. A lot of people don't even understand what is AI right now. A lot of people, we had this discussion before the episode started, people are saying that they're in love with ChatGPT or something like this, This is a complete misunderstanding of what a transformer model is. There is no thinking. And I think right before I came here, there was I don't know if it's nature.com or fortune.com or someone, they published a detailed research between language and brain, language and thinking, and they made the description, or the distinction actually, between children think and understand the world, but they cannot talk, and at the same time a person without having like a mental disorder that cannot talk, imperative speech, exactly, they can solve logical puzzles. So these two things are not related at all.
So speech is not...
it's one of the ways to represent thought, actually, because you can blink and represent thought, you can move your ears, you can move your hands. And this is the same with the transformer model.
I'm of course nowhere... I don't know much about this, but I know. I think Noam Chomsky also wrote some stuff about this exactly. How much, and a lot of other thinkers, how much language defines us as humans, and how much it is necessary to think. At least abstract thinking. Like how much do you need? And definitely you need some sort of language to think very abstract thoughts. But how much, we'll never know, because the people who don't speak will not tell us.
Exactly.
How abstract
they're very direct.
And it also is very difficult to find a person who had no contact with language at all. Right? That's absolutely almost impossible, right? To find someone that had never had any imprinted language, because as you say, if he's had an impediment, but he still had contact with language, right? So he may have some... Anyway, we're really drifting off.
We're going to the little islands above the
way off
Australia.
Way off them. So just to finish so there's prohibited. So prohibited categories is one. The second down the line, so if it's not prohibited, but it's risky, so again, we're taking it down a notch on the risk pyramid. Into the high risk category. So again, there's a list, and it's a long list. It's actually so long that they had to put an annex into the. So there's many annexes to the act, and there's a list of things that are high risk. Some good examples are things connected to labor, like labor law, labor relations in the workplace. So this whole category, and education, giving people benefits, etc. Some things that actually have a lot of, because you can argue that this biometrics and stuff, that's not really very mainstream. There's a limited number of uses, but things like, labor relations in the workplace, I mean, that's super important. And there's a lot of efficiencies there that AI can provide. Social benefits and medical benefits, all the kind of state administered, that's also, we can get huge improvements of efficiency of administering aid and medical services, etc., especially medical, right? That's an enormous market. But here you kind of run into the rights of the subjects, right? So rights of the people who are or not entitled to the benefits. So here the most important thing is making sure, at least that's what the AI Act says, that these decisions are not based just on the AI system. So it's kind of repetition from the GDPR, right? That the completely automated systems, we don't want them. We want a human in the loop. It's okay if the machine does preparatory work, so it kind of prepares the decision or gives insights or finds patterns or something. So it's not illegal to use AI in these fields, but you must ensure that there's a human there making the final decision, and because it's a high-risk system, do a lot of paperwork. So make sure you've run the risk analysis, that you've mitigated the risk, you have all these boxes checked, and then, like I said, there's a long list, especially if you're a provider. So if you're someone selling such a system, the list.
I think we should make the distinction after that between the different types, because these categories of, let's say, categories of things which are prohibited, but there's also types of people that are providers.
Yeah. So the provider, so the person who makes and or sells is the provider. And then there's importers, the distributors, that's quite understandable. They just market someone else's system. And there's the deployers, the people just use it, something kind of end user. So in this respect, it would be, I don't know, a medical facility or social security,
e-commerce store,
whatever. Yeah. So someone at the end of the chain that actually uses the system, not necessarily makes it, but there's also a nice catch there that if you modify the system in any meaningful way, so not just very cosmetically, you become a provider in the AI Act's eyes. So there's a lot of, and I think in Europe this is very, since we don't really we're not makers, we don't create many models as from scratch. Yeah. Basically what most European companies, including our members at the Chamber, they just take a ready model and modify it, retrain it, rag it, or add some components, and that would make them providers. Okay. With all the big list,
all the responsibility,
then
very good to note. Actually,
it's something you should really watch out for, right? Because some people say, we're just adding a little rag stack to it, and
it's just a wrapper.
It's exactly it's just no. So you definitely, and this is maybe the worst thing about the whole, as you said, I think in the beginning, that it kind of shifts the focus from, hey, we just want to make a great product, to, hey, we got to ask the lawyers if this is okay, right? Which is, again, depending where you stand, sometimes some people argue, and this is where the AI Act comes from, that caution, it's better to be safe than sorry. Let's call it this line of thinking then, something can go wrong, and something can go wrong. I mean, things go wrong all the time. Yeah. But in Europe, we kind of take it too far and say, so we're going to enact this huge piece of legislation, and everyone will have to fill out this paperwork to make sure that really they took all precautions to make sure it doesn't go wrong. And it's like, we lose something in the process. Yeah?
We definitely lose progress and competitiveness. I think this is one of the core problems. And it's like an egg. It's like an egg and the chicken problem. Do we get more companies to build here if we provide them better regulatory framework and the resources? Because as we discussed, we can touch on it later, but we also don't have the infrastructure. No one can just come in and build like a Tesla gigafactory. They did it in Germany, but for example, in Bulgaria, this is not going to be possible due to lack of enough electricity and water supply in a centralized place without, let's say, actually harming anything which is around. Because Bulgaria is also very, I would say, we're an agricultural country. So there's no land, very little land that's not either used for agriculture or tourism, and I am not a fan of...
Or a mountain.
Yeah, a mountain, yeah, even better, a mountain, yeah. I'm not a fan of breaking workable land or something beautiful for the sake of technology. Yeah. There's better ways, you know, as you say, sometimes there's something that can be done in the sea, something that can be done in a deserted place, you know, whatever place that cannot be used. X factory, we have an old atomic plant that's not used, you know, why not use it, you know? or build, you can build, let's say a small, you know, these kind of like movable atomic centers, you know, we can build one a little bit bigger one, you know.
I'm a great fan.
Yeah, I'm yet to be convinced that it's safe, but, you know, probably it is. But the thing
we have to check.
The thing is that once you find out, you're dead. So, you know. But that was not the point. The point is like how do we break this type of endless circle of do they come and we do the cycle. We actually don't have control over who invests in Europe, apart from setting up the right ecosystem. So I think that it's our goal first to provide a better the legislation, tax breaks, whatever it's required just to bring some people, you know, regardless of our political differences with China, they obviously have better results in terms of infrastructure, industrialization, and so on. So we can learn some things. We don't need to copy it. I'm not saying that we should apply the same labor laws or the same social score, no. But there's also technical things that we can learn from building a better factory, building a robotic factory for the things that we don't need. And then provide people the ability to work in what they actually have to work. And this is another topic which is obviously coming up with the AI, and we can touch on it in more detail later, but what happens when there's no jobs, you know? And unlike, let's say, here in Bulgaria, a lot of people think they're very poor and so on. Compared to the rest of the world, Bulgaria is in top 1% almost everywhere. Yeah. Like, because we are a small country, there's billions of people who don't have even clean water. Yeah. So we are actually living really well, regardless of the political stuff and so on. We can, if there's an AI revolution of sorts, we are in Europe, we're the closest to ever achieving universal basic income, for example. If this is the solution, you won't be able to do this in Africa. You would not be able, because the difference between rich and poor there is colossal. There's no, you're either very poor, let's say my colleagues were in, what's the name, not Abuja, but the capital in Nigeria, okay, and they say they saw such a difference, like they never seen anything like this before, the difference between poor and rich, and the way to
typical of developing countries.
Yeah, so I think that the AI Act right now seems like something out there, but I think it's a fundamental for us to create something meaningful for the long run. You know,
I couldn't agree more. The question is, how do we get this across to the policymakers? This is, I think, at the core of the Chamber's mission.
Yeah, 100%.
We had, for a long time, Europe was going on a kind of autopilot, right? Like, we need to regulate, we need to have more laws. Politicians were kind of caught off guard, surprised by the way that this whole internet, digital technology, things started changing. Yep. They kind of panicked, and we have all these laws. But for 10 years, for 12 years, counting my Google times, we've been trying to say, look, guys, you're going the wrong way. This is really going to hurt innovation. This is going to slow us down. And everybody just ignored the business. You're just saying, business always says that, we don't believe you. You just want to make more money, which is, of course, true. That's what business wants. But that doesn't mean it wasn't true. And in the end, after this, spell that I talked about in the beginning of just enacting laws for some of them good reasons, because we're only talking digital regulation, but there's also the ESG regulation, the environmental regulation. There's just layers of regulation in Europe that finally started to, because no one act, even the AI Act, it's not going to put AI companies out of business. It's just going to make it a little bit less profitable. Okay. And if you add on top of that the GDPR, which also I saw this metric that GDPR compliance equals to a 12% tax. Maybe that's a bit too much?
I think it's a bit too much.
It's a bit too much, but it is something, right? Maybe it's a 1% tax, right? And then you add something else, ESG, that also equals a 1% tax. And suddenly you end up with the European companies being 10 or 15% less productive, less competitive than the ones in the US and China. And, that kind of puts them out of the race. You can't compete there. So you have to start making decisions. Last year, we had 2 reports, one of them commissioned paid for by the European Commission. So they're not like coming from business. So they hired an ex-Prime Minister of Italy, Mario Draghi, to write a report, why is Europe failing? And he kind of wrote the whole report, many reasons, but over-regulation was one of the biggest. And he singled out AI Act and GDPR as 2 major obstacles to European competitiveness and called for change. Right? And we need to change this. As you said, if we want people to come, people to invest, people to create, I'm not even saying we should attract investors from abroad, but we should at least try to keep people here from leaving.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because that's the biggest problem that I see talking to young, startup founders and stuff. Most of them either want to or feel compelled to move at least formally to the US because of legal reasons, because of lack of access to capital, because mostly, I think that's probably the number one reason, but that also comes from the legal situation. Because I'm not an expert on Bulgarian regulations, but in Poland, the way the company law is structured is way less effective when you're running a company, when you're doing founding rounds, and when you want to give stock options to you. All that is just way more clunky in Europe, and just the practice is not there, etc., etc. So there's just a lot of legal stuff that is not an AI Act, but is really hurting our companies, and that's why they move there. Our biggest member is 11 Labs. And they are officially now, even though it was founded by Poles and grew in Poland, now it's officially an American company.
Yeah, I love 11 Labs.
Yeah, me too. But, they're officially, we treat them as Polish, but, legally they are no longer a Polish company. So this is something we have to stop. People are leaving. We're not less intelligent than the Americans or the Chinese, right? I don't think so, especially if you look at the top names in companies like OpenAI. A lot of them were Polish and European. Jan LeCun from Meta are now leaving, is French, etc., etc. There's just tons of people creating AI, like the core of AI, the biggest AI companies, but they're not doing it here.
Yeah.
They're doing it there. So when are we going to wake up and smell the coffee? Right? There must be something wrong. So the lack of financial union, right? There should be no barriers to how capital is transferred across Europe. And services as well. That's not finished. We don't have a single market. It's not like you can set up a company and immediately go and sell everywhere in Europe without any problems. No, everywhere you go.
Absolutely not, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely not. Why not? We're supposed to be a common market, a single market. What the hell is going on? When are we going to start dealing with these issues? And we need to get serious about it if we want to catch up. Because, for a long time we say, okay, the US are in front, but, they're big, they're a single market, they got more money, we're excused. But now we got taken over by the Chinese. Like, what's our excuse? They were a poor country 20 years ago, right? Yeah. And they've just been skyrocketing. And not just, I'm not talking production, because, of course, that they've got the production juggernaut, massive machine, but innovation. Yeah. They took us over in innovation. What happened? How did we let this happen? And when are we going to kind of start waking up to this reality that either we do something or all our best people will just move away, because this will become, a place where rich Chinese and Americans will come for holidays.
Yeah, just to see what happened in the medieval times.
It's oh, this is where the Europeans used to live. So this is no longer a question about business. I think it's an existential question, because without business, as you say, universal basic income, I think that's something we should look maybe in the future. But first we need to, build this business that will take everybody's jobs. You know what I mean?
First
we need to create that problem, and then we need to solve it.
They are building it. I'm just worried that we're not going to participate in it, getting the fruits.
Exactly.
Because I don't mind like automating jobs as long as it's understood that the human being is the center of this place, not the shareholders, but every human being. Because right now we're not. I mean, the reality is that no one is thinking about the people.
Are we going into critique of capitalism?
No, not at all.
I'm fine. I'm
I'm just looking at the statistics. More robots, less people, and nothing for the middle class. There's no middle class right now.
That's an issue. That's an issue. I agree personally. This is not a position of the AI chamber. Okay, we don't. 100%. We don't go into this high-level political stuff.
No, not at all.
But I do agree that's an issue we should think about, and the kind of trajectory is not good.
Because in when you think about it, let's say here we're currently talking specifically about policy, right? If the AI companies, for example, are only looking into how to profit, why would a legislator who has to be responsible for everyone equally would support them? What is the point?
So you're going to ethics now.
That's what I'm saying. That's how do we bridge this so the AI, we use the benefits, but not only for profitability, but for productivity and for, let's say, everyone's benefit. Why we don't have something to predict the road quality so there's less crashes? Instead of that, we're having more video generation content so we can put some slop on the internet.
Well, that's very good questions. I was in the public sector for many years, and I'm a great. How should I put it? I ache for the lack of innovative spirit in the public sector. And the fact that they don't pursue this path, right? There's no drive towards more efficiency, more productivity. I don't know. Again, I'm talking mostly from a Polish experience.
We're worse.
Well, I don't want to suggest this, but
I am saying it.
You know what I mean? That there's a lot of stuff that could be happening and isn't. As you said, companies have a natural kind of inbuilt mechanism that pushes them towards efficiency, and because it's greed, right?
I mean, profitability doesn't necessarily have to be greed. If you do a good job, you should be rewarded more. I'm not against capitalism at all.
Exactly.
I'm just saying that there's a level in efficiency, let's say, for example, efficiency management in government that needs to happen first. Because let's say in at least the public sector in Bulgaria, then they don't have a common goal. There is no, we need to make Bulgaria better. It's 5 parties.
Make Bulgaria great again.
Exactly, no, there's parties that want to do that, but they don't mean the same that I do. But there needs to be a push. And also, I'm seeing a lot of young people don't know what's going on. Because with the whole AI thing, no one wants to hire them. What are you going to do with young population with 25 to 30% unemployment? What are they supposed to do? How are they supposed to become senior from not doing anything? And the AI Act, I think, should focus more on this, on how to do the technology to help future generations in let's say human management, let's call it this way.
Well, luckily the future generations are fewer and fewer, so the problem is the demographics in Europe are another cause of concern.
Definitely cause of concern.
I'm not so. I've heard this evidence, and there are some economic signals that are pointing to what you're saying. I'm personally kind of an optimist. I grew up in the 90s where we had like 20% unemployment. Now we're basically below the natural level of unemployment. So we're almost fully employed, which supposedly doesn't happen in open market economies, but it is. Like anyone who wants a job has a job. Sometimes there's a disconnect between what kind of a job people want and what kind of jobs are available. But that's a different thing.
That's a drive, motivation to grow, right?
Well, on the one hand, yes, but we have too many sociologists because suddenly half of, 45 young people in Poland finish university. But many of them do sociology, psychology, all these kind of soft but we don't have enough engineers.
Yeah.
We don't have, and I'm not even talking about high-level AI developers, which is of course,
like a
or
normal
data
engineer.
scientists, but normal engineers, people that can, like put together a radio or something. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Because that's no longer, funky. It's better to be a white collar than a blue collar suddenly. But maybe this is changing, right?
Yeah.
If you look at the happiest days of capitalism, this was the days where blue-collar workers were paid well enough to have a house.
Yeah, 60s, 70s USA.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was the golden age. Maybe this is kind of funnily going to come back through AI, because where does AI cut jobs? In the white-collar part, right? The people who suddenly need to rethink, maybe they should go back to working with their own hands. I'm even thinking about taking a course in, I don't know, welding or something.
Yeah, it's, for sure. Yeah, I painted my old apartment last week. So yeah,
there's a job for you once you get automated.
Yeah, 100%. But one of the things that I just want to put us back into the conversation about regulation.
Yeah, sorry, I ran off.
No problem. Of course. What you mentioned something that I never heard about. It called Omnibus.
Yes.
What is that?
Oh, yes. Yeah, so, okay, it kind of follows on to the wake up and smell the coffee. Someone finally did.
Yeah.
So, Mario Draghi complained in an event a year after the publication of his report that nothing was being done. So suddenly the Commission did something. It's a package of adjustments to exactly AI Act and the GDPR. So two of the things that were singled out as the perpetrators of this lack of competitiveness or potentially harming our innovative sectors. So there's a few changes there. They are not revolutionary, unfortunately, because, we even advocated for scrapping of the AI Act, but of course that's not going to happen. The GDPR as well. I think even though I participated in the drafting of it, I think it's fundamentally not a good piece of legislation, right? Because has it we know that it costs maybe not 12%, but some percent on the companies. We know it annoys everyone because we have to click okay without reading many times daily. But has it really changed anything in terms of what's happening in the world and how how the data is treated? I don't see any major change. A lot of jobs were created actually. I heard a European data protection supervisor at a business breakfast in Brussels say that GDPR was a great success because we created 75,000 jobs. These are jobs filling in unnecessary paperwork, but hey, what a great success. But as you said in the beginning, these could be jobs for people, they should be jobs. These jobs should be people creating new products, producing something or advancing science, etc., not filling stupid papers. And this is where we go wrong. So there are some changes. Some of them are quite positive. So we want to support them and make sure they are not watered down in the process, because this is the Commission proposed. But the way it works in Brussels, I mentioned this kind of process of destroying a good idea through the legislative process. It goes to the councils and the member states and the parliament, and they all work on their version. Then they meet again and try to agree on a compromise. And this is where all the compromise is sometimes a good word, sometimes a bad word. So we hope to keep this at least few good provisions that are there. One of them is allowing model creators to be a little bit safer when it comes to GDPR, because obviously you have a large data set. It's very difficult to make sure there's no personal data in there, especially if you have a very expansive definition of personal data. In Europe,
almost
basically
impossible.
Exactly. Everything can be personal data, so you can never be sure that in your big data set there's no personal data. So what is happening is they are conditionally, of course, under conditions, but at least it's more or less clear that legitimate interest is a basis for training models, right? So of the creator, of the processor of the data. So that would be a really good thing. I would at least give some legal, because risk is an economic factor, right? If even for investors, you got you got this company you want to sell, you want to maybe not sell, but get a new round of investment. They're going to do due diligence, and they're going to say, well, are you sure this this data set that you're using for training is completely safe? And you go,
is it proprietary?
Well, maybe not. Well, sorry, we either undervalue you or we just pull out because the risk is too much. Or, which is probably more often, you say, well, how about you go take it to the US, and that's not going to be a problem, right?
100%. Yeah.
So this is a good change. There's also some adjustments to the AI Act as well, which are small, but we're calling it a good first step. At least for once, the machine has decided it's gone too far, and it wants to take a small step back, which is already a great thing. It's not going to really change the balance, but at least maybe it's a sign of change. So we're hopeful, supportive. It's limited, but at least some positive aspects there. And one more thing that they plan to delay the entry into force of some of these provisions, because I think I mentioned this very briefly.
How should people prepare for this? What are the main steps? Because from what I understood from the conversation, there are the multiple, let's call it checkpoints of this. It doesn't go into effect immediately.
Yeah, it's a staggered entry into force is what they're calling it. So some provisions are the prohibited systems. That's already banned since February. That entered into force first. Then there was August, another group of provisions, relatively small, well, at least not for many people, important. But the biggest group that actually concerns high-risk system was supposed to enter into force next year, and then in 2027, the rest. So what is happening now in the Omnibus? There's a clause that will delay this by. And this is where it gets. So the idea is good. We were also pushing for this. There's even an initiative called Stop the Clock, and it's not just us. It's like I don't know how many 100 European companies signed this open letter that we need more time. This is premature. Let's just move the enforcement by 2 years. I think this is what most of the industry wants. So they didn't go for that, and instead of that, there's a very complicated formula that, it may be 6 months, but if something is delayed, then it's going to be longer, but something. So what we're actually wanting to do in the process now is just to simplify. Say, look, guys, just put a simple, we're delaying it by 12 months. Okay, you don't want to do 2 years, do 1 year, but at least make it simple and clear so everybody knows what's happening and doesn't have to check this half a page long paragraph to make sure that, what came, which, because there's a whole process of making additional guidance and codes of conduct. The AI Act is just the beginning, it's 150 pages. But by now, the Commission, I think, added at least as many pages in terms of guidance. I mentioned the definition of AI systems, so the most basic definition. There's, I think, 16 pages of guidance on that by the European Commission. And then there's a lot of another guidance document on AI system, high-risk systems, et cetera, and more in the works, right? So it's going to be just the law part of the AI Act with the accompanying guidance and the codes of practice on general purpose AI. That's an interesting topic in itself. That's probably going to be a big book.
I think we should do an AI which should answer questions about the AI Act.
I think if there isn't one, I'd be surprised, because it's like the perfect use case, explaining like having a bot that will put the legalese into plain language. So yes, there was you have to already look at the AI Act to see if you're not doing something prohibited, because that's already in force, and the AI Act is a regulation. So it applies to everyone in the union already.
So it has fines and so on.
And this is where it gets complicated.
Okay.
Because fines, at least for companies, like if you're watching in Bulgaria or in one of the other member states, fines will be administered probably against you by the local authority, and that's up to the member states to designate. So. Yes, from what I know, Bulgaria hasn't done it yet. That's why people, you are still safe because there's no one there to fine you.
As we speak right now, people are getting into a protest in front of the government building. So the AI Act is not really...
Not on the top of their minds.
Absolutely not.
But that's good. You can see it as a good thing. If there's no one to fine you...
we can do whatever you want in Bulgaria.
This is not the official position, okay? Don't quote us in here. But until there's someone to fine you... But, again, if bureaucrats are really nasty, they will finally, when they set up, they're going to look retrospectively and say, oh, we're going to fine you for the past 2 years when you were non-compliant. So we do not advise you break the law, okay? Let's make it clear.
Yep, 100%.
But there's a major issue with this all across Europe. Poland hasn't done it yet, and I think most countries, I know the Italians have, but most people are in different stages of the legislative process. So the member states themselves are late with this.
Mm-hmm.
So and that's why they kind of support moving the date as well, because we need more time as well. So it's quite clear that the AI Act was rushed. It was not really thought through. But coming back to what Brussels is like, Brussels, a presidency, a rotating presidency, has to have wins, right? So that's why there was the Spanish presidency. They needed to close this, so they had this is crazy. If you guys want to read up on the final stages of the negotiations, they worked 24 hours
just to finish it
in time, because this is a rumor. I'm not sure this is true, but someone told me in Brussels this was because the Spaniards already had a party planned where they're going to celebrate this big win of adopting the AI Act, because obviously there was a lot of political capital invested into this. Europe is the first jurisdiction to adopt this comprehensive AI regulation. This is a great achievement.
Big news,
Big news, something to be proud of. So they really wanted this success. So they really kind of overlooked many issues with the act, and it shouldn't have been adopted, right? That's the bottom line. But now politically it's very difficult to say, we were wrong. We have to get rid of
there's no stepping back from starting this,
So at least, we'll take what we can get. Some minor improvements are better than nothing. But again, being realistic, this is not going to solve the issues, right?
More threatening even, I think. But okay, so to finish off, right, first, how can people participate in policy? Let's say, for example, we joined AI Chamber because obviously met some of your colleagues. I really like the idea. I think you guys are doing great work in terms of trying to represent it. How can people participate in this? You're busy at work, you're writing the code, but you want to have a say. Yeah. How does it work?
This is an issue we face all around our region. People are just too busy working to be lobbying, because this is what it is. It's lobbying. Let me tell you, the Italians, the French, they know the value of lobbying. Right? They've been members of the union for a long time. They know how it works, and they know they have to be there where the decisions are being made. So they've got their organizations. They're well funded, well organized, deeply rooted, and they are highly effective in setting the agenda, because even setting the agenda is the most important thing, because that's where it starts. We're always late to the party in this region. So definitely become a member of anything. I'm not saying everybody needs to be a member of AI Chamber, but I'm sure there's a lot of other groups in Brussels, in Bulgaria, that are also active in Brussels. I've actually met some during my times at Google. So if you're a business, you're a company or an entrepreneur, really think about joining some organizations. That's number one. That also translates to people protesting, of course, is great. But also, I think, working through with your government, making sure your voice is heard. Because I was a bureaucrat too. Sometimes they are good and well-intentioned. They just don't have the information. They don't know what to do, right? Someone needs to go and tell. If you don't, someone else will, right? Yeah. So just protect your own interests. Because a lot of people, we have that in Poland, people just, politics, I don't want politics, I don't want anything to do with this. This is dirty, and it's not going to work anyway. And, I've been in this business on both sides, government and lobbying, for a long time, and it does work. That's one thing. You got to believe it does, because that's how many of these laws are written. People just come with ideas to politicians or officials, and they get picked up, and then they become law. So it's a proven fact that it works. And if you don't do it, you just don't have a say in this. So we definitely encourage everybody to be employed. You don't have to do it yourself because we know you're busy coding. That's why we're here. You hire us to go to Brussels, to meet with the politicians, to meet with the governments and try to get this across. The guys, we've got these great people because we do, right? Yeah. We got these great people in the universities and the companies. They're doing their jobs. They're creating nice stuff. Please make it easier for them, not harder, right? Because that's the bottom line. This is what we're for. Try and make it easier for companies to exist, create what they want to create and thrive, and maybe conquer the world next, right?
I just want to mention something when he said pay up, it doesn't mean we paid them. There's a membership fee, which is very trivial, to be completely honest, very trivial for smaller companies. And then there's a lot of interesting conversations happening in the chambers, chats and different types of meetings. We had one for dual use technology the other day.
Did. Another great topic.
Yeah, and we can do it another time,
Absolutely.
It's a very interesting topic as well. So obviously getting into groups with different people with the similar goals, it's great. We are only a couple from around 200 companies maybe. There's only 2 or 3 doing cybersecurity. There's everything from mapping to satellites to coding in different types of things. AI has so many applications. There are people doing farming. There's people doing mathematics with them. So I recommend joining something like this. I obviously we're already members, so I'm biased, but
me too.
If it's another form of chamber, find people with similar goal to essentially start lobbying together. The government is not a person. If you don't have a consistent impact or consistent communication never have impact, people change in the government, in the commission, the same way that they change in your local office.
Commission less often than governments. Especially Bulgaria.
Especially for sure.
Commission is far more solid. But
still, you need to kind of like change. You need to be there permanently.
Continue. It's a process that never ends. I'm happy because it keeps me employed, of course. But it's something you have to continue. You have to continue, and the things never end. My biggest, actually, my most basic, and this is how I came into this whole world of policy making, is copyright. Yep. So I was an open source guy that was fighting Microsoft monopoly back in the
And then you went to work for Google.
And then I went to work for Google. But this copyright thing just keeps on. You'd think that we had because it was the late 90s and beginning of the noughties, and what the biggest things in copyright was open source and file sharing. So there was a whole big
torrents
torrent war. Torrents came a little bit later. It was Emule and eDonkey, that kind of stuff. Peer-to-peer sharing. So that was a huge policy fight, but that ended. But then another began. So there was torrents, and then there was something. There was intermediary liability, and then there was the whole directive in Europe that lasted 80 years. So issues just keep on going. So yes, definitely a very good point that it's never too late, because there's going to be a next AI Act, by the way.
For sure. From now on, there will be industrial AI, independence from Robots Act, and so on. I'm sure.
I'm sure the robots are coming.
No doubt.
The Robots Act.
I'm just wondering who's going to make them actually operational on their own. I think we're going to be first in the era of remotely operated home assistant, for example. The one that they showed several months ago was an independent robot. It was remote controlled by someone in the Philippines, I think. So the Filipino-controlled home assistant is
there's
first.
A joke in there.
No, that's not a joke. That's what happened. I'm not supporting it or against it. I'm just saying.
The fact that they chose the Philippines for like a home assistant, I think there's a little bit.
Yeah. I worked in blockchain before, and for 7 years. So essentially, Philippines were the place where people are used to work remotely on things. Call centers are in Philippines. Right. The people who were doing the Axie Infinity type of gaming, they were in Philippines. Because when you think about it, the Philippines, it's a bunch of islands. So these people are not necessarily working in the same way that you get a car and you go to the other city. It's not so simple to get transported. So they're looking for the opportunities, and they very early on found these types of remote work, and they speak very good English. So essentially, and also I think they might speak Spanish as well, maybe. I'm not sure.
They
I think they might have been Spanish
They
colony
were both
as well.
first the Spanish colony, and then they became a U.S.
but
colony.
very close to the USA, so they have good English, which is very helpful. We have this same in Bulgaria, very high level of English. I think so, at least. And then this helps a lot with remote work. People are always trying to spend less to reach the same tasks. I heard a lot of complaints from engineers being replaced by people in India. Indians are traditionally very mathematically oriented. They have the chess champions. So there's no doubt that they have the capability, and as a group and as education, as everything, to deliver very good results in terms of development. So I think, given the price of labor.
But, again, India is an even starker example of how they have a huge population, but as you said, they have a huge talent pool, so they should be like a global superpower. But they're not. See, they're still renting themselves.
Technically are, but not that much yet.
No,
but in one generation.
They're not. Why? Because they really have bad institutions. Right? The whole economic, political, legal system, the caste system. So there's a bunch of really talented people that are not realizing their potential. This is actually good for us because they're a competition.
Oh yeah, huge competition, by the way.
And this is what the Nobel prizes in economics were, both for the previous year, so Darana Acemoglu, and this year as well. The kind of how institutions and the way you set up your economy, your society, how that influences your outputs, right? It's not just, it doesn't happen magically.
It's culture, right? Education, demographics, religion, and so on. Yeah.
Yes, but a lot of it is under your control, right? Europe is the source of this is where the Industrial Revolution happened, the Enlightenment.
Democracy was invented.
This is all created in Europe. We were the forefront of innovation up to a point where we stopped being the forefront of innovation. And this is something we really need to reflect on quickly.
Reignite
and
the fire.
Change. And it's and again, but there's a positive spin to that. That as in politics, you said, but innovation also keeps happening. Right, so it's not like all innovation has been done. It's too late. Let's just
it's not the dark ages.
There's going to be new inventions, and we have this Professor Sankowski in Poland. He said, AI is just such a relatively new field, and there's just so many more things that will be discovered, and so many uses, as you say. It's not about creating LLMs. It's about finding where to put this AI, how to put it to good use, how to make it work for agriculture. Both of our countries are still heavily, reliant on agriculture. There's just so much productivity, and so we can reduce the use of pesticides, herbicides. We can create little robots that will, eat the little bugs instead of poisoning them. Think about how much of a better world we can create with this. And suddenly, it's possible, right? All these things that we had to pick the
right stuff
by hand, right? I remember, I don't know if you had it here, but growing up in communist Poland, we had this little bug that used to eat the potatoes.
The orange one.
Yeah, the orange one.
I've lived in a village.
And we had schools were brought into the field, so the kids will pick the.
We have it.
Oh my God. And that kind of stuff will be the thing of the past, because we'll have this funky little robot that will just go eat it up and actually, mill them and turn them into fertilizer or a protein-based drink.
Eat them. Some people eat them. Yeah.
Exactly. I just had a good idea for a startup.
Yep. Save the children
from protein. So much protein is being wasted.
I'm never getting any present food from you. So, all right, Marcin. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks a lot.
I think it was a very interesting episode. I learned a lot. Legislation is coming in for sure. Follow us, guys, for more episodes. We're going to share some links on the AI Chamber, how you can participate, and we're going to see you in the next episode. Have a good one.
Thanks a lot.